So I am delighted to be joined by none other than Kathryn Shuttleworth. You may have seen or heard this more famous Kathryn Shuttleworth on TV and radio, called upon regularly to comment on retail trends and activity. And I am very proud to have occasionally been mistaken for when talking on the radio, but not the time when you were talking about school uniform. But Kathryn Shuttleworth is the CEO and founder of Savvy Marketing, a business in Leeds specialising in shopper marketing, working with some of the biggest brands around. Your background and experience, Kathryn, means you are often called to speak on BBC, Sky News. I saw last week that you were quoted in the Wall Street Journal. I'm really delighted that you've agreed to join us today and talk to us a bit about what the future might hold for retail, the high street, independence. So hello, Kathryn Shuttleworth, and thank you for talking to us today.
Oh, thanks ever so much for inviting me and let me have a chat. And it is funny, isn't it, when you meet the person with your same name. It's lovely to be contacted out of the blue, as I was a few years ago, by Cathryn saying, I've got the same name as you. So, yeah, it's fantastic. And I've been talking to the media now for about 8 or 9 years. It's been, I've never been trained to do it. It's just been one of those things. But my background and my career has always been in retail. So I started off more years ago than I'm prepared to mention at Manchester Polytechnic, as it was then, doing the first retail degree. And I've kind of become what I am. I did retail marketing, and I've been involved in the retail industry for many years since then, as an interested observer. And I now run a business. We work with lots of the world's biggest brands, big retail brands, from people like Adidas, Asda, Morrison's. But we also have a part of our business where we talk to 1,000 shoppers every single month, and we find out how they're feeling. And at the moment, that's really interesting, the way they're feeling about going out to the shops, how they're spending money. And perhaps we can pick on some of that today, Cathryn, about what they feel in the future. So insight is at the heart of what we do. And that sort of gives us a view about the retail market. And that's why we're able to talk about it.
Yeah. So just thinking about when it did hit and how much retail that has remained on the high street and in physical shops has had to adapt. Have you seen some examples of how that's kind of worked well, or where those changes have introduced challenges?
You know, one of the things about independent retailers in the UK is they're very creative, and they're also quite fleet of foot, and they are able to do things very quickly. So whilst the big food retailers, the Tesco's and so on of this world, were doing amazing things, for some of them it takes longer to do that because they're sort of turning oil tankers around. So I think some of the great work we saw was in local retailers, where they were using social media as a way to get people to come to them. They were using that for the older people in society. And I think actually they've managed to re-establish themselves as a more vital part of our local high street. And what we've seen as lockdown as we came out of a firm lockdown and retailers opened up again, is that the local high street is really important, which could be quite interesting for a lot of people. The big high streets, so the sort of city centres, are still being, to a large extent, ignored by shoppers. And when we talk to shoppers, they're very nervous of going there. But local high streets are having a bit of a renaissance, because if you're going to be stuck working from home, you're still going to want to see human beings. You're still going to want to go for a coffee. You're still going to want to do something to break your day up. And that, I think, has created a real renaissance for them, because people aren't rushing back to do it. And of course, what we learnt in lockdown was that online works. Even if you were hugely sceptical about it, and we know that the over 60s were particularly sceptical as a group, they've taken it on. It's been hugely successful. And it's hard to argue why you would now go back to shops if you can do everything online.
Mm. So, because it's really good to hear what you're saying about particularly like the local town centres, and the experience certainly for the people who'll be hopefully watching this that are our customers, who have altered some of their procedures for making themselves COVID secure, introduced appointment systems, given a much more kind of personal shopper experience. Can you see any kind of more experiential retail coming through after this, maybe when there's less kind of hand sanitising?
Well, yeah, I mean, out of bad things, good things come, don't they? So I think one of the really interesting things that I've been watching has been about how independent retailers have been setting up this personal appointment system. I did an interview on Radio 5 with a school uniform outfitter from Northern Ireland, and he was explaining to me how he was working an appointment system, and actually that was much better because it's a one-to-one relationship. Everything is dealt with. You know, you're not sort of in that difficult position where you've got 5 customers all arriving at once, because we all know in retail that's what happens. No one turns up and then they all turn up together. You know, actually that works really well, and you can see that in quite a few sections of retail. So baby wear is another one. And I think where there is a very specific need and you want to go and buy something, appointment setting is brilliant, because it allows you a deeper relationship with your customer than you would have had before, and you can get to know more about them, and the more you know about them, the better it is. So I think that for some retailers, they will change their business plan around that. And something about, you know, driving demand through operating in a different way, which also from a business model perspective is better, because you can plan your staffing better around appointment setting. So I think, you know, there's an element of that that's useful. I think that allied with a social media strategy of some kind, and you have to be really careful here about, you know, what works for Boohoo will not work for an independent shop on the high street. So you've got to be very clear about how you're communicating, and having a face of your business in the community, I think, is important, because people connect with people, and never has that been more so than through this crisis. So I think, you know, having a position in your local community, talking to people, providing interesting content, be it on Facebook or Twitter, however you know, or Instagram, however you want to use it, is really useful. And I think lots of us are really nervous about doing that, about filming ourselves, aren't we, and walking around our shops and doing that. But COVID has sort of meant, has been the, you know, has necessitated us doing some of these things. And I would say, try it, have a go, you know, start doing those things. And if you think no one's watching, it doesn't really matter, because eventually people will start to watch. And you're seeing retailers that are really, really struggling. It's where they've got a lack of human connection, and where actually I could go and buy that thing from somewhere else. So you need to create that kind of reason to visit, and explain about your appointment setting, explain why that's a really, really good thing, because I think retailers have been great at thinking about how to create a safe environment in which to shop.
From the insight that you've had, how do you see the trends emerging and what the future might look like for high street retail or for independent retail?
I think it's very difficult, isn't it? You know, normally in business we set strategies, don't we, about what the future is going to look like, what the next season and the next year is going to look like. And at the moment, it feels like it's difficult to plan the next week, particularly if you're in a local area that's been subject to lockdowns. That's really, really hard, isn't it? What we're seeing in retail, and we should be seeing in retail, is that people should be able to do lots of different jobs. They should be able to sell at all times. You know, selling skills are really important and should not be underestimated. But in terms of your strategy, it's got to be about, if you're a big retailer, it's got to be about what does your footprint look like? So, you know, where are the shops that are profitable? Where are the shops that aren't profitable? What are you doing? And you can see a number of the retailers have been slow at that. So their strategic thinking is about, what does the makeup of their whole business look like? You know, what does their head office look like? When it comes down, what we can learn from that, and when it comes down to more independent businesses, is save your costs. Yeah, absolutely focus ruthlessly on your cost line. Can't always, in this COVID situation, drive the sales line the way that you normally would. Plan in the short term, break down your business plan into weeks and months, and try, you know, if you can, bring a bit of fun back into what you're doing, because this has been a really, really hard time for retailers. And try and inject some fun back into your business. Find people to talk to who are like you. You know, that's really important, because it's very lonely running businesses. Yeah, I run my own business and it's hard sometimes. You know, the buck stops with me. And make sure that, you know, you've got the right relationships with schools. You know, that's important as well. They've also had a tough time. How do you do that? And think about your community, about how can you make the most of every opportunity in your community. Don't worry too much about the big stuff. So my advice is sort of think small, which might sound a bit back to front, but just think about how you're going to protect you, because we can't manage all of these bigger things.
That seems like a really good point to end then, Kathryn, particularly the bit about bringing fun back in. I think that's definitely on the agenda for us all.
There will be better times ahead than there have been. The high street, it's going to be tough on the high street, but the people who'll survive and thrive are the ones who've got their own business interests at heart and are really focusing on them. And that's what I would suggest people think about.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Kathryn. I think there'll be calls for a weekly video message from the alternative Kathryn Shuttleworth, I think, from now on. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely brilliant to get your expert insights, and all the best with everything as the months roll on.
I'm sure you found that interview both enlightening and informative. There is a future for schoolwear retailers, and we're here to help in any way we can. Thank you for joining our first digital schoolwear show, the No Show Show. Who knows, this may be the first of many in our new normal. But one thing we do know is that you have all got through a somewhat different and difficult back to school. And hopefully you've come out the other side much stronger for it. Now we just need to prepare for the next one. And we look forward to receiving your forward orders so that we can crack on and make sure that we get the goods to you in good time for back to school 2021, all things permitting. So again, thank you for joining us for the David Luke No Show Show. Stay in touch and goodbye for now. See you soon.